Well, hey, all you wiretappers, good to be back here in studio of Gangland Wire. Those of you who don't know me, most of you do, I think. Sometimes a lot of repeat listeners out there, and I really appreciate all you guys that always come back, make comments on my YouTube channel, and comment on my Gangland Wire podcast group page, and so I really appreciate all you. And for you guys that don't know me, I was with the Kansas City Police Department. I spent about 14 years in the intelligence unit. We worked the Sabella crime family here in Kansas City and a variety of other things like that. Retired and did a couple other things, and find now my last retirement gig is I'm a podcaster, and this has just been so much fun for me, guys. I really appreciate all your support. I'm getting to know all these authors all around the United States. There's not a place, if you're in intelligence, I like to have contacts where you can learn something or find out something or get something done. Well, there's not any city, I don't think, in the United States. I don't know somebody that's been on my podcast that I can call them up or email them and say, hey, what about this or what about that? So it's really broadened my life and just made my life much richer. So anyhow, today, without further ado, we have Gregory Macalino. Gregory, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here, really, truly.
Yeah, well, I really, as I told you when we were talking before, I really am pleased about getting you on the show and about your book that you wrote, Little Pussy and Long Branch, Perfect Together. This is about New Jersey. And not just like New Jersey, just across the river, but down into New Jersey. And there's a lot of mafia activity that went on down there. And I've not really covered it very much, just a little bit. Years ago, Scott DJ did a book. I can't remember the name of it now, that got up into New Jersey. And
Gang State, or I'm sorry, Garden State Gangland.
Garden State and Gangland, yeah. And that was,
Yeah.
God, I was one of my early interviews. Sometime maybe in the first year, like 5 or 6 years ago. So Gregory has put together a book about Anthony Little Pussy and Long Branch, which is part of the Genovese family. And he has really studied this, but he grew up here. So, uh, Gregory, tell us about your life. And you grew up in this area in Monmouth County and Long Branch. And what did you see that then stirred you to eventually write this book about it?
Well, you know, being in Long Branch, you will find out that there is a huge Italian community, and everybody knew everybody that knew someone that was connected in somehow, and
Yeah.
not like heavy hitters or anything like that, but more like there was tons and tons of bookies. There was numbers runners. The local mob dudes used to hire high school kids that I went to high school with to be the runners, and so everybody knew somebody that was connected, and you couldn't help but know. And as you read the book, you will come to find out that Little Pussy completely infiltrated the whole municipality in terms of the local politicians, the city council. There's accusations of the police chief. There's also, uh, Monmouth County police higher ups that he completely corrupted, and he basically ran the town of Long Branch for 20 years. And he was in headlines, constantly making headlines for 20 years. And you'll be amazed that there used to be a local newspaper. It was over 100 years old. It was called the Daily Register. I'm sorry, the Daily Record. It was out of Long Branch. It was over 100 years old. It stopped. Yeah, I think it started in the 1880s and it stopped in like the late 1970s. So, or just about 100 years old. And if you went a month without a blaring headline about the mob in Long Branch, you'd be completely surprised, because I I went through microfiche and tons of records from the old newspapers, and every other week there was some big major headline about Anthony Little Pussy Russo and his little gang of guys and what was going down. And it was prevalent. It was a constant. It's amazing.
I believe it. I tell you a little side story. When my son was in high school, he had this friend who actually spent all of his life up until they got to high school, and his dad moved back here in Toms River, New Jersey, which is kind of down in that area. And so my son one day he loved sports, and this
Right.
kid loves sports, and he had I looked down what he had. He had a parlay card. I said, "Where did you get that?" He said, "Oh," he said, "Eddie gets them. His dad gets them at work. He gets them from some guy that has one of those Tomaine wagons that comes around, those coffee wagons, and he gets them. And so we're making our picks." I said, "What are you doing, dude?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. Big Ed got them, gave them to Eddie. We're just making our picks. We like put $5 down, or
Yeah,
I think only put a dollar down on our picks." I
sure.
just said, "Oh my God."
Yeah,
I tell you what, we didn't have anything like that growing up, but in
right,
Toms
right.
River, New Jersey, and Long Branch in New Jersey, that was pretty prevalent. I got a
Yeah,
feeling you probably saw stuff like that yourself when you were in high school and on
uh,
up since then.
yeah. That's like 40 minutes south of Long Branch. Also,
Okay. Eddie Murphy. Eddie will be so proud of me to do this show, and I got to get a hold of him as soon as I get off of here, and I'll probably give him this book after I get done with it, because he'll be really excited to read it.
great.
Anyhow, let's talk about Anthony Big Pussy Russo. And
And he was little pussy. His brother was big
oh,
pussy.
okay, all right, all right, all right. Yeah, I got a little pussy. I just my mind. I was trying to do two things at once. My mind. So go ahead. You go ahead and start telling us about this guy.
Okay, so Anthony Little Pussy is from the Newark area. They migrated up to Newark from Brazil. The family, they were from a lot of Italians. Half of the Italians went to America, and half the other Italians went to South America. So his family went to Sao Paulo, Brazil, I believe, and then they migrated to Newark. And he was born 1916, I believe. He was one of 13 children. The father died early, and so he was on the streets of Newark. And he had two older brothers. One was called Ralph, and the other one was called John. Ralph and John started working for Richie the Boot Boyardo, who was big time bootlegger in Newark. And this is before the mafia was formulated. Before there was Five Family, all that. This is during Prohibition, and Anthony was like the runt of the family, and he idolized his brother John. Well, one thing led to another. They all started working for Richie Boyardo. The only reason Anthony Little Pussy rose to the heights he did is because of his brother John. John was the opposite of Anthony. Was boisterous, a loudmouth. He loved to draw attention to himself, and supposedly wasn't the sharpest, tool in the in the box. But his brother was the total opposite of him, and he was a heavy hitter. He ended up going to jail in the 20s for a prohibition murder in the service of Richie the Boot. But because Richie at this point had influence, the 30-year stint that John got was reduced to only 10 years. He got out. Meanwhile, the older brother, Ralph, was an incorrigible, unbelievable. And he was being told constantly by Richie the Boot, cool it, cool it, cool it. He didn't. And supposedly, with the two brothers knowing, a little pussy and big pussy, knowing that he was going to get that Richie was going to whack their older brother, Ralph, it was okay with them. That's how incorrigible and a wild man the older brother was.
Mm.
Well, so they went from and the way they got their nicknames, by the way.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to ask that. You got to
Yeah,
tell us about the nicknames.
yeah. So, and of course, this comes from The Sopranos as well. The Sopranos bought this.
Yeah.
So you're right. So with Ralph dead, the two brothers had been, before they joined Richie's gang, they had been petty thieves, but they were renowned for being great cat burglars because they could climb up. They were very athletic. They could climb up drainage pipes, break into buildings, second floor, second story men, B&E guys, and they were renowned for doing that. And when they became known throughout the streets of as because they were cat burglars as Big Pussy and Little Pussy. So that's where that comes
All
from.
right.
Okay. So then
Makes
they
sense.
right. So then they joined Richie the Boot's organization full time through Prohibition, and then later into the 30s, and then Richie the Boot came under the auspices of the Genovese family through Lucky Luciano. Before it was even called the Genovese family, it was the Luciano family,
Yeah.
and he had some problems in Newark with the Jewish gangsters, Longy Zwillman, and Longy Zwillman, had some big associates. I mean,
Mhm.
he was really good friends with Lucky Luciano. He was very good friends with Al Capone, where Richie the Boot was not, regardless that he was Italian and he was Jewish. But they had a gang war, but after a while it was settled. They became really good friends, as a matter of fact, Richie the Boot and Longy. And as he grew in all his endeavors, which after Prohibition, of course, included gambling, number one, chylocking, number two, and the runners, the numbers runner, policy racket. That's where the Pussy Brothers went from being petty criminals to racketeers. And they just moved up and up and up. And
So now, how did they end up down in Long Branch? We got Newark, but Long Branch, what you described
right,
for me is what an hour, a couple hours south of Newark, more mid
it,
state
it,
and along the
it
coast.
it's 50 minutes without traffic. It's a 50-minute ride south from Newark to Long Branch. 50 minutes.
Okay,
Okay, and the way that happened was this: in I don't know if you saw the movie The Alto Knights, the
yeah, I
story of
did. Hmm.
Othello and Vito Genovese. Those two were engaged in for who was going to run the family.
Right, the
So
Luciano family.
as we know, Vito Genovese's chauffeur bodyguard Vincent the Chin Gigante took a shot at Costello, wounded him, but he had to go on the lam because a doorman had witnessed and recognized him. While he was on the lam, Vito Genovese needed a new driver. So he asked Richie the Boot, give me one of your best guys to be my driving bodyguard. Well, everybody thought that Big Pussy should get that gig, but Richie didn't want to give him up because he was so valuable to him. He gave up his younger brother, Little Pussy, who at this point in the late 50s was annoying everybody in Newark. And if it wasn't for John, they would have not tolerated Anthony Little Pussy Russo. They would have probably killed him in the 50s. But he ended up getting the job as the chauffeur for Vito Genovese. As you know, that is a big time position. That
Yeah,
that that opens you up to. I mean, there's been Vincent Gigante was Vito's chauffeur, and he ended up being the Godfather. Other ones become underbosses, other become powerful lieutenants and captains. So this was like a plum job to get, and he got it. And the reason why he got it is as loudmouth as he was, and not as smart. He had two things going for him. He was able to pull a pistol and shoot people.
yeah.
Right? Yeah, which when you're doing bodyguard detail is a must. But he could also make money. He had a penchant for making money, and after at this point, not so much. I mean, he was doing okay with his what do you call it? The machines that they put in bars. He had like
Poker, slot
poker,
machines,
slot machine,
slots, and video
poker,
poker. Back then,
joker,
it was slot machines. Now it's
yeah,
video poker. Yeah,
joke,
joking
joker,
poker.
right? I know pinball. So he had that going, and gambling and sports betting and even loan sharking and all that. But so anyway, to answer your question was that Vito Genovese used to come to Jersey a lot, and when he came to Jersey a lot, he used to go to Long Branch a lot because there was a huge concentration of Italians there for about forever. And Vito ended up buying a lot of properties, a lot of businesses.
Mm.
Okay. And then his daughter ended up marrying a guy that lived in Long Branch by the name of Pat Simonetti. And Pat Simonetti was originally from Newark as well. A ton of people, everybody, all the Italians that were from Long Branch had migrated down from Newark.
Ah, okay.
Okay. So it wasn't only just a summertime resort destination. When it also became home to a lot of these people that decided to leave Newark. So next thing you know, while Little Pussy is driving for Vito, he ended up spending a lot of time in Long Branch, made a lot of friends, and Vito used to school him, buy property, buy property, it's the best thing. Well, then that gig only lasted less than 2 years as his chauffeur because Vito ended up getting convicted and going to prison for narcotics trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So at this point, everybody thought that Anthony Little Pussy Russo was going to be disappear, you know, not ever be heard of again. But while in jail, Vito wanted Long Branch to open up Long Branch for the rackets. He saw real potential down there, and he actually liked. A lot of people didn't like Anthony Russo, but Vito did, and he thought he was funny. That's what I've been told. He thought he had a good sense of humor. He was very
Huh.
boisterous. So he instructed Richie the Boot to put Anthony in charge of the Monmouth County rackets with the mission control seat being in Long Branch. And next thing you know, Little Pussy started buying a lot of businesses in town, started making more money. And this is the point where he starts making a lot of money because now he learned the real estate business. He learned labor racketeering.
Yeah.
And when you read the book, you'll be amazed at how much how many legitimate businesses he owned, including golf courses, hotels, mega restaurants, pharmacies, delis. He was all over the place.
Wow. So now he's basically a crew now. Did he like become a capo, or how did they refer to him as a capo
That's funny.
down in for New Jersey?
Right. That's funny how you became that, because he was still just a soldier, but
Yeah.
because Vito had picked him to be to give him a territory to run. But I was told that there is sometimes they use for a capo, they use the word captain or they use lieutenant. Well,
Right.
I've been told that it's sort of like a lieutenant was just under a captain, but over regular soldiers.
Yeah, just like the our police department.
Yeah, right, right. So exactly. So this is where he was. So technically, in a weird way, little pussy who hadn't never been respected much within his
Yeah.
brethren had actually risen to a higher position than his brother, who was very, very respected. You
Uh,
know,
huh, interesting. Because he was such a big moneymaker and had people under him and had a lot of power. I mean, you got a lot of
right?
people under you. He's going to have political power down there. I assume he was
Oh,
instrumental in buying off the police and everybody in that county down there. He
yeah,
probably owned that county politically, didn't he?
correct. Absolutely, he did. And it wasn't just that. And whenever Richie the Boot needed him to go far and wide, he sent him down to the Caribbean to take over the casinos down there. He sent him to Las Vegas, where by the weirdest coincidences, they infiltrated a small mom and pop casino. Nothing, I mean, like almost like a joke of a casino.
Yeah.
But but it just so happened this casino happened to be owned by two guys from Long Branch over here. They own this outpost of the casino, the Jolly Trolley Casino, and Pussy Russo infiltrated it. And again, he was always seen as like not too smart in making these absurd, assumptions and all this. But there is a scene where, from the movie Casino, the character played by Joe Pesci,
Hmm.
he's a real life gangster by the name of Anthony Spilatro. They
Yeah.
nicknamed him the Ant. He was a very, very scary individual. Well, he happened to have a jewelry store called the Gold Mine right behind the Jolly Trolley Casino,
Hmm.
and he was extorting the casino. Okay, and he used to go
Yeah.
there. Well, then Pussy Russo shows up there, and there's an encounter between the two.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and Pussy Russo didn't didn't know when to shut up. Okay, he always kind of made himself out the bigger he was, and he gotten into Spilatro's face and threatened to kill him on the spot. And, Spilotro was someone you didn't do that to,
Yeah.
but Spilotro then figured out who he was and that he was hooked up with Richie the Boot. And if you know about anything about Richie the Boot, he was a very scary person
Yeah.
himself. And you've probably heard of the famous, or maybe you haven't, but I'll tell you now, of the incinerator that he had way back in his. Did you ever hear that?
No, I didn't hear that one.
Okay. There's a great book called In the Godfather Garden. It's all about Richie the Boot. And he was known to have, he had 60 acres, 38, I think it's 30 acres
Yeah.
up in Livingston. And way, way, way back in the forest, he had like a grate, or like a big grill, a giant human sized grill, where he was known to get rid of his,
Oh.
his, yeah. And, but it's actually, they actually recorded them having this conversation on those books in the early 1960s,
Yeah.
the Cavalcante family and Pussy Russo's
Yeah.
on it. They're talking about it. So as scary as Anthony Spilatro was, he had heard rumors about the Newark crew, and they were
Yeah.
and he backed down,
Yeah.
to Russo.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
That's
mean,
all.
it's
That's
kinda
all.
like mob deal, like if somebody's connected guy, if you find out somebody's a connected guy, you gotta hold up back and then go to the
Right.
bosses and then let them talk about it and then figure out what you're gonna do. And Slatro, he was a violent guy, but he knew the rules. He did know
Right.
the rules.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and almost Pussy Russo almost didn't. It's like
yeah.
he just acted. He was a reactionary, but and this one time it worked in his favor.
Huh, interesting. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And so they were. I believe that did he just move in on these guys because they were from Long Branch and he was so intimidating that they just started giving him a piece of it? Is that how that worked? Because normally these casinos were controlled by mob because they arranged for loans from the Teamsters pension fund, but I don't sense that was
But
going on here.
this is what happened. So the guys that owned the casino in Las Vegas that lived here in Long Branch,
Hmm.
these three guys, two of them lived in Long Branch. There were three of them. These three guys owned about 10 restaurants in the Long Branch area, well-to-do restaurants, classy restaurants.
Hmm.
Okay. So two things are happening. One, these three guys are being extorted by Anthony Spilatro in Vegas and they didn't
Yeah.
like it. Okay. The other thing is when Pussy Russo found out that the guys that owned that casino were living in Long Branch, he sent his men to all the restaurants and said, "Look, you're going to have labor problems here. You're going to have picketing out front. We're going to unionize all your." So they said, "Give us a piece of that casino, or you're going to have union problems."
Okay.
Well, they all heard about Pussy Roots. They knew who he was. They knew he was like as serious as anything could be. And in a weird way, it was they were happy to get Pussy Russo to get the ant out of there to get
Yeah.
Spilatro, who they didn't like. So, by the way, those three guys ended up going to prison.
Oh, really?
Owned, yeah, they were like rich guys that owned. Well, they went two of them went to prison. I think the
Oh,
third one didn't for some reason. I can't remember correctly, but it's
interesting.
a story.
Yeah, that's now Little Pussy. That's a name that was real familiar in The Sopranos, and you mentioned when we were talking about how David Chase must have read that. Now, was there some of these stories that you remember that are really ripped from real life here in Long Branch?
Okay, so this is going to blow your mind too, and you're probably going to think it's not true, but it is. Okay, I've I just recently, about 2 years, 3 years ago, I sold a bar. I used to own a bar, a rock and roll bar. It was called the
Mhm.
Brighton Bar. Okay, and it's one of the oldest rock and roll original, not cover bands, right? Not doing a original rock and roll venues. They started doing original music in the mid '70s, like '74.
Yeah.
I ended up buying it in the '96, and I sold it in 2022.
Mhm.
Okay, okay. It's the only rock and roll joint in Long Branch for mega years, and again, it's original. So I don't know if you're familiar with The Sopranos. There is a whole 2 years worth of a story where the character Montesanti, Christopher Montesanti,
Oh,
and his
yeah, yeah, yeah,
girlfriend take
yeah,
over a live rock and roll bar in Long Branch, New Jersey,
yeah. I
and
remember now.
being
Yeah.
silenced by the FBI and the state police for illegal activities with drugs and all that. Okay, that directly comes from my bar, which is Brighton Bar. Okay, everybody knew it, and as a matter of fact, on two different episodes, while in the bar, they have two bands that play themselves on the show. Were actually
Uh-huh.
bands play the Brighton all the time. And a guy that lived right around the corner from the bar, Ron Haney, he was the technical advisor for clothing on the Soprano show. He was one of those bands that played at the Brighton all the time, and he's a friend of mine from way back, and he lived right around the corner from the Brighton bar. So that's there's that connection. David Chase, I'm sure knew this. Okay,
Yeah,
right. So, and just the word, just the nickname Pussy as
yeah,
again that comes from that. And then there's the whole drug thing because Vito Genovese, when he got busted in '59 for drugs, the Genovese family went in the opposite direction and had this moratorium totally against
yeah,
any kind of narcotics. Okay, so there ended up being a gang war in Long Branch starting in '75, ended in 1980 between Pussy Russo and this loose knit of criminals of a drug ring, and he didn't want any drugs in Long Branch, and they were pushing for drugs. So they actually, what ended up happening, about 8 people died. 8 people
wow.
died. Yeah. So
Because he had guys under him, the Genovese family, and was came down hard on no drugs, and he had guys that are already working under him that were making money off of drugs.
that yes, but that's not the other. He was battling a whole set of guys that weren't even involved in the mob. They were just drug pushers. They were
Just
just drug.
drug pushers. Oh, okay, I got it.
He was trying to get them out of town. They were trying to stay in town, and not just in town. Surrounding towns too. Asbury, Red
Yeah.
Bank. Yeah,
Huh,
Monmouth.
interesting.
Yeah,
A lot of history there.
yeah, and it's all in the book. You're gonna enjoy reading about the mob, the mob war between the two factions. And see who's who and all that. I think you'll really like it.
What is you got a lot of stories in here. I
Yeah.
have, brushed through it, haven't had time to do it. Lot of stories in here. Tell us another one that, that you found particularly interesting.
Well, it's all to me. It was always so. Here's how this is what happened. Because of all these weird connections. I was a kid. We happened to like rent our house out to an individual who was one of the guys that ended up going to war with Pussy Russo over this drug thing. So,
Mhm,
you know, we rented our house out to them, and we found out soon after, like, oh my God, what did we do?
mhm.
And it's just it's all this intercalated like connections that just kept revisiting and revisiting, revisiting. And I was present one time. Well, I met Pussy Russo one time,
Mm.
and
What were the circumstances of that?
oh, so here's what the circumstance was. It was my parents' 25th year anniversary of marriage, and we had gone over to dinner, as it was like sort of like a family only pre-anniversary, just a family.
Mhm,
My sister flew in from California, and we went to the Surf Lounge. Now, the Surf Lounge, unbeknownst to me at the time, I was only like 12 years old, is owned by Pussy Russo and his guys, but it was known as the best Italian restaurant around. So we went there, and this weird circumstances occur where there was these two men there, and my sister was staring at one of them, which I didn't understand why, while the other one was staring at my father. And and I was the only one to notice this, that these two staring contests were going on. And then all of a sudden, this some guy comes over to the table, and he, in a not a nice way, he was like to my father, "I know you, but it's bothering me. Where are you from?" And my father, who's a complete legit guy, complete
yeah.
legit, was very happy to tell him, "I- it's I used to do your floors. My uncle, my father, and all his brothers had a floor waxing business,
Uh-huh.
and they used to do all the business around here. And the guy that would say to my father, "Who are you?" was Pussy Russo. Right? And my father recognized him right away and said, "I used to do your floors, and before I used to do your floors, I used to do Vito Genovese's floors, and I know you from both times." So that came out, and then it turns out that my my uncle, my father's brother, who invented a floor wax, and that's the basis for their business, made a
Yeah.
ton of money off of selling it. Ended up buying a $1 million house in Deal in the '60s, and he lived maybe 5 blocks away from Pussy Russo, who owned like $11 million house, and they became friends. So meanwhile, my sister's staring at the other guy, and the other guy was Tony Dale Aguilino, who was one of Pussy's intimates. My sister recognized him, and you won't believe from where? From Las Vegas. My sister moved to California, and
Yeah.
from California, she used to go to Vegas. While in Vegas, some guy comes up to her, who's this guy, Tony Dale
Yeah.
Aguilino, and offers her 2 free tickets to her and her girlfriend that were there to go see Elvis at the Hilton.
Oh, wow.
So So in 1971, 72,
Yeah.
my sister got to see Elvis for free,
Yeah.
one of those half moon
Oh,
booths.
yeah.
She
Yeah.
said it was one of the great.
Cool.
It was one of the greatest concerts she ever seen, and she was treated like a queen. Free
Yeah.
champagne, all this. The guy who did this was the guy that was in that restaurant. So my sister recognized him. The guy Pussy was recognized my father. It was just like all this weird, weird, weird stuff. Unbelievable.
Really?
It's all in the book.
Crazy. Yeah,
Like, it's all in
crazy,
the book.
crazy. You got
Yeah.
a lot of great stories in this book. I know
I don't know if
that.
I'm doing it justice and you're following, if I'm giving too much detail.
That's exactly what I want is that we don't want
Right.
to give it all away, but there's no way as big as this, as thick as this book is, guys, there's no way he's going to tell all the stories. No matter how many stories you tell, Greg, there's going to be a whole lot more in this book.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I tell you, it's just a taste. These are really great stories.
Yeah.
Now, little pussy in the end, what kind of an end did he come to?
Well, okay. So it was during the time that he was having this gang war with this drug ring, independent drug ring. And everybody thought that the independent drug ring had killed him, but it wasn't. He was killed by his own people because his chauffeur was a guy by the name of Patrick Pizzuto. Patrick Pizzuto. Now, Patrick Pizzuto, he met in jail. They were bunkmates, and he was a very tough guy. Patrick Pizzuto. He was not a mob guy. He was not a mob guy. He was a gunman. A stick up man.
Yeah.
But he was a tough guy, and he used to do favors for Pussy in jail. Go get him his meals. Pussy Russo was illiterate, by the way. He couldn't read or write. So
Uh-huh.
Patrick Pizzuto, who happened to be very intelligent, by the way, very, very intelligent, and a tough guy, would write all his letters, read all his letters. And at one time, Pussy Russo, who was in jail at the same time with his second in command, the guy by the name of Babe Miraglia, were stabbed by the black population.
Yeah.
And who came to their rescue was Patrick Pizzuto. And throughout a couple of weeks, he stabbed a couple of black guys in jail and all that. Anyway, when they both got out of jail at the same time, and he immediately went to work for him as his chauffeur. Now, again, a chauffeur is always a stepping stone to a big,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right. So now they're battling this drug ring, and they set up a guy to get killed. He gets killed. They forgot to wipe the fingerprints off the car. Patrick Pizzuto was one of the guys on the hit. Went back to the location at a rest stop after the murder and wiped it down. And then, and based on the fact that he took place in a murder and that he went and wiped down the thing and really put his life on a line twice in one day.
Yeah.
Pussy Russo put him up for induction, official induction, right? And then, unfortunately, he got caught, Patrick Pizzuto, with an old indictment from the '60s. Before he even met Pussy Russo, he had robbed a grocer, an 81-year-old grocer up in Passaic, and then the guy lunged at him. He shot him and killed him. And he had been able to stave off the prosecution, but now they had him dead to rights. So he actually turned state's evidence against the mob. This is right towards the end of the warring faction over the drug ring. So what ends up happening is the head of the Genovese crime family from New York sent word down to Richie the Boot that Pussy Russo had to go, no matter how much money he was able to generate, and he was able to generate a lot of money for the family. But the fact that he almost was, a hair away from letting in a guy that was just turned state's evidence, he had to go. So most people thought it was the drug ring that killed him, but it wasn't. It was his own people. So his two very good friends came to Long Branch and they whacked him out right in Long Branch here at his apartment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite a story. They found him surrounded by stuffed cats.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's right. Yep.
Crazy, crazy, crazy.
Yeah.
Gregory Macalino. I'm looking forward to really getting into this book. And I know my little friend Eddie is going to be reading this too. We'll be passing this around.
Great.
I really appreciate that you put all this together. It's like I said, this is not covered that much.
Right.
5 families up there are covered too much almost, and I cover them too much, but there's so many great stories. But now I moved down into New Jersey. I'll probably go through this and maybe come up with another show or two out of your book. I'll give you credit. I'll make sure I let them know that I got this out of there. I was thumbing through there. I see Bruce Springsteen's name. Did he ever play your club? I guess you didn't have his club until after he got big time, did he?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was there. Now, I was at the time, I was actually underage. I didn't own it then. I'm a musician, and I used to play at that club, the Brighton Bar, all the time. And I was always using my brother's ID. But he played there a couple times, Bruce, and I was there one time. Yeah, so we have a wall of fame.
Yeah.
And it's now in my basement. I took it because I sold the place because of the pandemic. I owned it for 26 years, but I sold the place. I have it. He's on the wall. He's there, and his wife was next door neighbors with Pussy Russo. I mean, literally, her family lived right
Patty Schiaffo.
Yeah, and as I say in the book, Bruce sings about the pink Cadillac. There's only one that had a pink Cadillac convertible, and that was Pussy Russo. So.
Interesting. I know he has a pretty good one about Atlantic City. That's a pretty good one. He's got a pretty good mob song, and not a lot of songs about the mob, but that's a good one.
I agree. Yeah. And Pussy Russo was was in with all those guys, with Angelo Bruno and Nicky Scarfo. He did time They became really good friends. So, you know,
Yeah, that's another little explored aspect is that connection with Philly,
yeah,
Atlantic City,
that's
and
right.
New Jersey, and New York. I mean, they were really all intertwined with each other.
Exactly. And you do know that the Philly mob also has an outpost in Newark. They have a little section of Newark as well.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. As a matter of fact, Angelo Bruno, who was killed, I'm sure you know that he was
Yeah.
killed. Was and was killed
Testa.
by his own consigliere, who was running Newark for him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a
Interesting.
guy by the name of Tony Banana Cabanegro.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. I remember that name now.
Yeah,
I'm trying to put that together. There's so much sometimes runs through my head. I can't
yeah,
remember it all, but
yeah.
I do remember that name, Caponegro. That's how
Cabanegro.
you pronounce. That's why those names I probably have butchered in stories in the past. But
Right, right, right.
all right, Gregory, I really appreciate you coming on the show and imparting some of these stories with us. And guys, you got to get out and get this book. It's just if you want to know about Newark and New Jersey and on down the coast in New Jersey, it's got it all in there. It has got it all.
Yeah, and I,
Thanks
I
a
want
lot.
to I want to thank you, and I'm honored for being on your show. And by the way, I loved your Bobby Manna section. That
Oh,
was
good.
that was fantastic. Tons and tons of details that I never knew. Great stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I worked a lot on that one. I actually had a guy from New York help me. He gave me kind of the basis, and I went in and learned a bunch more. So it was a pretty fascinating story.
Yes, definitely.
So thank you,
I
Gregory.
enjoyed.
Thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Gary. Appreciate it.
Don't forget, I like to ride motorcycles. So when you're out on the streets there in your big F-150, watch out for those little motorcycles when you're out. If you have a problem with PTSD and you've been in the service, be sure and go to the VA website. And they'll help with your drugs and alcohol problem if you got that problem or gambling. If not, you can go to Anthony Ruggiano. He's a counselor down in Florida. He's got a hotline on his website. If you got a problem with gambling, most states will have, if you have gambling, most states will have a hotline number to call. Just have to search around for it. I've always got stuff to sell. I got my books, I got my movies. They're all on Amazon. Just go and I got links down below in the show notes and just go to my Amazon sales page and you can figure out what to do. I really appreciate y'all tuning in and we'll keep coming back and doing this. Thanks, guys. This.